Hey guys, welcome to the Powerful Man Show, where we help married businessmen save their marriages without having to talk about it, get unstuck, and gain clarity in their lives. As I like to say, life is too short for average. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. Now let's get this started. All right, guys, great to have you here. Today's topic is one that comes up so often, Tim, when we're talking to the men, especially men that have had infidelity, right, in the past, whether it be an emotional affair, a physical affair, or a business partner who screwed them over and have other things along those lines. Maybe it's a friend. But really, it comes to, can you really let go of the past? I mean, truly, completely let go of the past so it doesn't play like a bad Britney Spears song from the 80s in your head at the most inappropriate times. So, Tim, let's talk about that today. What's your experience with this?
Yeah, I mean, right now, could you just define for me what you mean by letting go?
What I mean by is a lot of guys that we talk to, right, that are either in the program or guys that are interested in coming into the program, right, they'll talk about, especially, I'll just use the affair, right, physical or emotional affair.
Mhm,
And I'll talk about guys that are in the program. They'll reconcile with their wife. They'll go through the activation method, right? Their wife and
mhm.
them have split up for whatever reason. They go through the activation method and they've reconciled and they'll say, hey, look, my marriage is better than it's ever been, better than when we originally got married, right? They'll be having sex, and sex is just an indicator of a health of a marriage, right? Because they're having intimacy. Usually, you theorize that if both people are going to come together in union in the bedroom, things are going okay, right? So guys are having sex more often. Their wife will report that the relationship in their marriage is better than it's ever been. And yet still they have this gnawing notion in the back of their head that X years ago, whatever it may be, right, their wife cheated on them. And this could be about business and kind of other ways, but I'll use this for this particular story. Maybe their wife had an emotional affair. Maybe their wife picked up their phone or they saw on their wife's phone that their wife was talking to a guy somewhere else for some other reason. And they've reconciled that. They've gone through the path of forgiveness. They've gone through clearing conversations. Yet at those most inopportune times, the remembrance of that text message, the thought of their wife being with another man pops into their head. Can a man truly get over that?
Okay. Um, can he get over it? Um, yes. Is he gonna forget it? No. Can he learn to live with it differently? 100%. Um, and it go the same rings true whether it's the affair, whether it's insecurities. We have a lot of men that work with us that are very successful financially, seven, eight, nine figures. Yet, no matter how much they achieve, they just never feel happy or worthy of having the success. And that is because they haven't let go of the past. Some of those guys on the surface, they look successful. On the inside, they feel like a failure. And that's because a lot of the childhood experiences and stories that may have been going on for them um, come up and haunt them, really, and plague them. And the same is true of that. Can they forget it? No. Can they learn to live differently with it? Yes, absolutely. In my opinion. Now, just speaking to the affair, um, it's kind of like the process of a scab forming, right? This is the way I like to look at it, anyway. So in the beginning, you get cut and it hurts, it stings, it's bleeding, and you need to just stop the bleeding. So you apply some pressure, you just put something on it, and you push down real hard. That's kind of like when you first find out that the affair is happening and you just overcome with emotion and you don't know what to do and you just need to stop the bleeding. Then after a while, the bleeding stops and the blood begins to clot. And then over the next day or two, the scab begins to form. And then give it a little bit more time, the scab eventually falls off and you've got a little bit of a scar. And around the scar, usually there's a bit of a pink mark. It's still a bit tender to touch. Not as sore as it was before, and definitely not as painful as it was when the cut first happened. but you know it's there. If you kind of catch it, let's say you're taking off your top and the cuts on your hand, and you catch it, the edge of the scab or the edge of the scar, you catch it when you're taking your top off, it's going to sting. You're going to know about it. Then over time, that scar tissue forms and it hardens. And you may bang your hand on something as you walk by. Maybe it's the kitchen counter or something else. It doesn't hurt at all. But then you might be drinking a beer, as we all like to do. You take hold of the beer with that same hand, and you see the scar, and you're reminded of that time when you cut your hand. But it doesn't trigger you as much as it used to. It doesn't charge you up in the same way. The memory's still there, but you've learned to live with that scar differently. And in my opinion, that's a lot like the process of being able to let go of something. It's never going to go. It's never going to be forgotten. You can certainly learn to live with it differently.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I've seen work for the men that have gone through this situation, I've had this situation happen in business, right? And so what I've learned is the more that the men go there, talk about it, I guess, look at the scar in your analogy, the more that they go there initially, and it doesn't have to be with their partner, right? But the more that they have those conversations around it, the more they, instead of ignoring that the scar's there, they actually talk about, oh, here's how I got this scar. It loses its energy and it loses its hold on the men, right? It no longer has to be this amazingly negative experience. Because most guys, right, they don't want anybody else to know. That's the biggest thing. Like, they don't want anybody else to know. And they feel shame, guilt, a lack of worth often when this happens. But the more that they share it, that scar or the pain loses its power on the guys. The story, it's like that story. We all have that friend that tells the same friggin' story over and over and over again. And eventually you get tired of telling that. He gets tired of telling that story. You certainly get tired of hearing it. But the story loses its oomph, loses its power even for your friend who's telling it. And eventually he just stops telling it. And so it's the same thing happens for the guys, is the power that was in that pain, the power or whatever story you're telling yourself about, you weren't good enough, you weren't man enough, or whatever it is, and therefore your wife had to go have that affair, whatever it may be. It loses its power over you because it just becomes a story, and it just becomes lighter and just becomes something that happened. And you'll see this with people who've been in car accidents or other big events in their life. Over time, yeah, the car accident was a major deal, but the emotional charge and the pain that was in that accident just loses its appeal because they've talked about it. They've shared that story with others, right? And not from a place of victimhood. That's a key difference here. From a place of sharing and compassion, but also a place from getting clarity on what you need to be clear about. So basically what I'm saying is, don't stuff it down. Don't friggin' stuff it down and let it come up at the inappropriate times. Make sure you address it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Just like that cut, going from a cut to a scar, right? There's a process of healing that takes place. And it's the same is true of any instance that will have happened in your life. And yeah, I completely agree. The first step is, we call it coming clean, right? And when you come clean, it dissolves the shame that often stacks by remaining silent.
Yep.
So coming clean is a very empowering notion. And when you do it, look, there may be some victimhood in the beginning. Why? How could she do this? I thought we were good. How could this happen to me? I've been doing all the right things. I've been working on myself. I've been whatever the story is, right? So in the beginning, yeah, naturally there may be a little bit of victimhood, but if you're in the movement, you're going to get snapped out of that victimhood rather quickly, quite honestly.
And I think that's a key thing, though, if I'm going to interrupt for a second, is a key thing in this forgiveness or forgetting or whatever we want to call it, right? Or getting over it, is a lot of times the guys create stories around them that just aren't true. And because they're not talking about it or getting clarity on the situation, they create a story that's completely fabricated. So in other words, if a guy's wife has an affair, they start making it their fault rather than realizing it could be something nothing to do with him and completely on her insecurities, on things that are going on for her that are unrelated. He could have been doing everything right and still the affair would have happened. And it's that clarity of coming clean, like you're talking about, that healing portion is what happens for so many men is they create stories and they let things, push them down until they bubble up too high. And that's when a lot of the problems happen.
For sure. There's the pattern that we see often, right? Is, let's say something happens, the men remain silent, or some men remain silent. And as a result, shame stacks. The shame stacks. That then leads to sabotage, whether they have a short temper with the kids, maybe they stop working out, maybe they start eating junk food, maybe they begin to drink more, maybe they start smoking more weed, whatever it is, some form of sabotage then creeps in. That makes them feel even worse. And the only way they know how to deal with the sabotage is then to sedate. And they'll then sedate themselves so those feelings go away. And that's you could be even using some of the things they sabotage themselves with. And that then leads back to the beginning of shame. Shame then stacks more, sabotage more, sedate more. And it's this shame cycle that they get stuck in because they're remaining silent. And all the other thing that the mistake some guys do is they take too much ownership in the beginning by saying, hey, I know why she did it. I've not been the best I could have been, and whatever else, just completely excusing the fact that with the affair, for example, she did something that was her choice. She could have quite easily chosen not to do it. She had a part to play in it. Yeah, sure. You also played a part too. And that doesn't excuse the fact that she still did what she did. That was her choice, and she gets to own it. So in this process of letting go, the first thing you get to do is 100% come clean. That can shift. This is where your story, because it is a story that usually goes on throughout this process, your story can go from one that's a disempowering one that can often define you in a particular way to one that's a very empowering one that also can define you in a particular way because of instead of your story owning you when it's disempowering and pulling you down, you can own your story and it can be empowering. It can pull you up and become part of the tapestry, if you will, of your life. And you don't hide from it. Podcast I shared, we recorded a couple of episodes ago about how to heal the relationship with your father. Honestly, afterwards, I was thinking, should I have shared some of that? But the reality is it's out there anyway. I've spoken about it a lot. And in the process of owning those sides of me, instead of shunning them, I can then use them to empower myself and support others as well. So the first thing, can you fully let go of the past? No, but you can learn to live differently with it by coming clean. Second piece to that would then be owning your side of it. So you can actually take the positives and the lessons, like you were saying, Doug, a moment ago, and you can use those lessons to mold and shape your character to become a better version of yourself. And then the third step is, in my opinion, there are some processes that you get to go through, like the ones we deliver at the Alpha Reset, for example, because there will be emotions inside of you that you get to express. What you think in the mind, you feel in the body. You will be angry. And if you're not, then you're either lying to yourself or there's different questions to ask, because naturally you ought to be angry. It's a very healthy response. However, because of what some people have been led to believe, that their anger is dangerous or that anger is a show of violence or it's scary or it's threatening or whatever it is, they just stuff that down along with the story and they get on with things and they become a bit of a nice guy if they're not already one. Whereas the other men, the powerful men who choose to go through a process of actually turning this scab into a scar, they realize, hey, I've got to deal with some of this emotion. They can feel like there's something bubbling beneath the surface. They're not stupid. It's there and they don't deny it. So processes that we go through the alpha reset, I'm not going to dive into them because obviously we don't share what goes on there. But they give the men, and look, you don't need to go to an alpha reset either way. If you're in this position, lean into the emotions, because otherwise all you do is you become numb because you shove your emotions down. And you can't choose what emotions to feel. Oh, I'm just going to feel happy, but I'm not going to feel any sadness. Okay. You're going to feel both. It's not a design flaw for you to have an emotion. You're meant to feel them. They're there to serve a purpose. So, whether you do it in alpha reset or not, just pay attention to the emotions that are bubbling beneath the surface and express them, because it's during that process that you're going to feel very differently. Not logically understand the story differently, not logically take the lessons and logically come clean. You're actually going to physically embody the lessons that you are taking from it. Two very different things, neither of them exclusive of the other. They get to exist together. And when you come through the other side of that, instead of saying, hey, I own my part in it, and I get it. I get why she did what she did. Instead of saying it and pretending like you're okay with it, you'll be able to feel that you are completely at ease with the role that you played in it. And honestly, you may not accept the part she played in it, and you may be rather frustrated and pissed off, and you may create a very healthy, clear boundary that then helps with the next phase of aligning your life to the actual life that you get to live on the other side of the scab. Learning to live differently with it, right? You're going to live differently with it by coming up with new behaviors and boundaries that align to who you really are and the values that you actually have, rather than being pushed around and taken advantage of. And right there is freedom, because you realize, hey, I am me. She is her. We are two separate individuals. We're not responsible for each other's happiness. What she chooses to do is on her. What I choose to do is on me. If she chooses to do that, cool. She can then, what's she going to do about it? What's the process she is going to go through? And you're not there to save her or whatever the situation may be, the affair, the story in business, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I think an important thing here to remember as well, Tim, is, you want to be the hero of your own story. And the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, great book. If you guys haven't checked it out, highly recommend it. But you look at a hero's journey in any story, the Iliad, throughout history, or a movie, it follows a similar path. If you're the hero. Now, what happens is the hero hits a hard time. This could be the affair for you, right? He goes through a dip. The hero meets a guide of some sort. Now, if you could think about Star Wars, you got Yoda, right? That's there. He meets a guide. The guide shows him the path, the way, and he overcomes that hurdle. And in this case, it's getting over the affair or getting over what happened. Or maybe it's like I said, this could be a transgression from a friend or whatever it may be. And then the hero is able to continue his journey up the hill to success. And you, I propose, guys, are the hero. You're the alpha in this story. And you've taken a dip. That's all. But remember, in order to be the hero, you have to take a dip. You just have to. You can't just be the hero on a linear growth path. Never, ever happened in the history of people, right? You have to take a dip. And this scar, to Tim's analogy, could be yours. But you can't get over it if you just keep stuffing it down. You can't get over it if you allow yourself to be gaslit by your wife or your partner or whoever else it may be. Because what often happens for these guys, what causes this to get rehashed so many times, is some guys allow themselves to be gaslit. Their wife starts saying, well, it was you. You did this. You're a bad person. Do you need therapy? You need this, that, and the other. And they really gaslight the men. And the men, trying to be a great guy, take it on that identity and think, yeah, it is my fault. Yeah, I do need therapy. Yeah, I do need to fix these things. It's not her fault. I drove her to do this. And that's bullshit. Straight up bullshit. And so you get to own your side of the street. And there probably are things that you get to fix. We're humans. We all have things to fix, and find out what those are, right? If you're deactivated, get into the activation method, get activated. If there's something else going on, you figure out how to fix that element of your relationship or yourself. And it's not all your fault, right? Your wife made the choice, or your business partner, or whatever else the indiscretion was against. And so you get the chance to let go for yourself. And part of that is expressing yourself in whatever it may be. So follow Tim's points here. Really look at these points that you want to go through and take action. Don't sit there in the state of victimhood. That's the worst thing you can do. When you go into a state of victimhood, it's like taking that cut and reopening it again and again and again and again. So it doesn't even scar over. It just keeps becoming a scab. And that scar gets bigger, bigger, and bigger over time. And it's just nasty, by the way. It's just nasty. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's going to take the victim card. Nobody. So take back your power, gentlemen. Take it back for yourself. Take it back for those around you, because you deserve to have more. Tim, thank you so much. Guys, it's a wrap for us today. We'll see you next time on the Powerful Man Show. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are two types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, wolf is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here, so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated, because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.